Boom, welcome back to another episode of Evolving Through Experience. Y'all know where we talking about all the intangibles. We talking about growth mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and beyond. Because at the end of the day, if you're not evolving, then what are you doing? So today's a great day to start. Today, y'all, we have a special guest. We got my guy, Francis. Feeling, bro?
Man, can't complain, man. It's always a beautiful day, man.
Well, I appreciate you coming. It's a pleasure to have you here. Sure. And obviously, as you know, like I said, bro, we about to talk about the intangibles. We about to talk about the real cheat code. You feel me?
Yeah,
those intangibles. You like that?
Yeah.
Nah, for sure. So let's start off. You could tell a little people about what you do, and then we'll get into it about your story and everything.
Yeah, man. So I run a free financial literacy community. We teach trading, investing, make it real easy and simple for people to learn how to get into the stock market and anything with trading and investing, honestly. So we also have our coaches that trade live with them every single day and just try to help people level up.
Yeah, facts. So let's talk about it for you. What, before you even got into trading, like what were you doing before you got into like teaching and trading?
Well, honestly, the first thing I ever did for money was actually trading. My dad introduced it to me when I was 13. So, well, I guess technically I used to mow lawns and things like that when I was like, 12, 13. I'd take that money and then he put it into my custodial account and I started learning how to invest that way. But my first real, career, I guess, came from after I came home from prison in 2011. I got into construction, right, kind of doing things like digging ditches for electrical companies and stuff like that. And then I took that money from that kind of side hustle, or not side hustle, but that job income, and I started putting it into the market. And basically, I started trading from the porta potties. Man, I literally was in the porta potties, trading stocks. Yeah. And the moment I made more money than I did on my actual job, I was out of there. So, I mean, since then, it's just been entrepreneurship and trading, man.
Full time. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. So with that being said, as far as what's some situations where you felt like, even before trading or whatever, or while trading, where you just felt like you was in a bad mental space, and how did you get out of that?
Shoot, bro. Honestly, man, so my worst mental space was I was incarcerated. So I was 18 years old. I got locked up when I was 18. I came home when I was 21. And so early on in that stretch, it was obviously a lot of stress and adjustment. I mean, you're talking about being 18 years old. I'm maybe 165, 175 pounds soaking wet. And, you're in an environment with grown men who are, aggressive, violent, things of that nature. So it was just an adjustment period. And then also outside of that, just like being taken away from everything right? Like having your freedom taken away is a completely different experience than what I was used to, right? And so I was in a really bad place at that point, just trying to figure out who I was as a man, as a person. And so early on, I was always into trouble, even when I was incarcerated. So, getting into fights over TV channels in the prison, or, perceived disrespect or whatever it may be, get into it with the COs also. And so I ended up spending a lot of time in the hole. So I think my lowest point, I was in the hole for about 3 months on accident. I was supposed to be there for a month. And then they made a mistake on the paperwork as it was during the holiday season. And the person who put me there wasn't there. So they told me I had to wait until they got back, which was who knows when. Yeah. And I just wilded out. I flooded my cell, caused a whole bunch of havoc. And through that process, I met somebody who was a 5%er. One of the COs was actually a 5%er, Nation of Gods and Earths. And he introduced me. He was kind of just like, yo, man, why are you always causing trouble? Like you're already in this situation. Like, why are you making it harder for yourself? And as much as I didn't want to hear what he had to say, he basically printed out a stack of papers, which was the supreme mathematics in the Nation of Gods and Earths. And he slid it under my door. And in the hole, the only thing you can really have in there is the Bible and the Quran. And so he slid that under my door, printed it out, went to his office, printed out, slid it under. And that's really what kind of like introduced me to a new line of thinking. So, just understanding the foundational principles of like what a man should be, pursuing knowledge, pursuing wisdom, pursuing, just being a stand-up and righteous individual. Right. And so from that process, reading through that, led me to reading the Bible, just to read Proverbs, Psalms, and Ecclesiastes every day. And learning that, King Solomon prayed for wisdom to discern what was real and what was not real, and what was right and what was not right. Yeah. And, that storyline helped me out a lot. And then also reading the Quran. So I read both the Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastes, and then the Quran, and then and what he had printed out for me.
Yeah.
Through those things, that's really, I feel like that was the start of me becoming who I am today versus who I was before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nah, I'm glad you said that because that actually aligns with what I was going to ask you. So, in the sense of what got you to the place where you was like lashing out, like in a sense of what do you feel like were your reasons, whether that was childhood that you had to act out and that landed you in prison?
Yeah, man. So honestly, I think early on as a child, you know, I was pretty decent. I was a pretty calm kid, right? But I skipped a grade. I was ahead of my class at one point in kindergarten, first grade. I skipped a grade, so I was always younger than everybody. And my birthday was late in the year,
Okay.
so I was always younger than everybody. And even though I wasn't small for my age, I was small for my class size. And so through that process, you know, early on as a second, third grade, you get picked on by older kids and stuff like that. I learned that, you know, I could keep them off me by kind of being a little bit more aggressive in certain situations. And so I think, you know, when I really sit down and think about why I used to do some of the things I used to do, I think it was because, you know, you start being rewarded for certain behaviors and, you know, clowned or picked on for other behaviors, right? And so, you know, I went from being a kid that was, you know, ahead of the class to being a kid who was still ahead, you know, intellectually, but behavior-wise, I'm failing my classes because I can't stay in class.
Yeah.
I'm constantly fighting or constantly starting things or constantly misbehaving in class, picking with the teachers and stuff like that, getting kicked out of school, which is how I even learned how to trade in the first place. My dad taught me because I was home suspended.
Yeah.
I got kicked out for the rest of the school year. So I was sitting at home 13, but I'm in 9th grade.
Yeah.
And kicked out my entire freshman year. So I'm sitting home and he kind of, one thing led to another. He started introducing that to me. So going into incarceration, you know, it just was that root cause, I think, that was just exacerbated, you know, from being in a pressurized situation where now it's almost like being in a class in a new school, except you're in a new school of lions and tigers and bears, you know what I mean? So, I think that's really what foundation is.
Yeah. And it just had to redirect that energy. Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this, as far as with your pops, like obviously he was teaching you trading and things at a young age. So what were the other things he was instilling in you outside of just trading as a man? Yeah,
man, to be honest with you, man, like, you know, I'm African, right? And African dads and African parents in general, but African dads in particular are very focused on one particular thing, and that's education.
Education, yeah.
I mean, that's really I can't really recall having any other conversation with my dad like about real life. Like, this is how you deal with women or girls, or this is how you deal with other men, other people and stuff like that, or anything like that. It really was just go to school and pretty much get your shit together. You know what I'm saying? Like, and come back with A's and be an engineer or a doctor or something like that. And so it was always self-improvement through skill sets like that. Yeah. So me and my dad's relationship early on was always either I was playing the piano, learning, you know, how to code, or, you know, learning, you know, investing or studying history, English, whatever it may be, math. Yeah. I mean, bro, I used to spend my summers doing math, bro. Like, literally, I had a cousin who'd come over. Have fun. Man, bro, what? I mean, my cousin would come over and he'd be pissed because it's like he comes over to have fun for the summer, thinking we about to do something fun. My dad had a whiteboard out. We doing algebra, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's pretty much the main thing. But I think leading by example, though, I watched my dad also take care of the entire household. He paid all the bills. You know, my mom didn't work. She was home. I watched him, how he dealt with certain situations and things of that nature, and some things I didn't agree with because he's much more of a let things slide until he doesn't want to let it slide anymore type of person. Whereas I'm more of a like, I'm gonna deal with this right now, here and now. And so watching some of the things that he goes through in that personality and realizing like I don't, that's not what I want to. I don't want to wait until things build up to blow. I'm just gonna speak on what I need to speak on right now. And so, you know, observing how he moved and seeing what things I did like and things I didn't like about how my dad operates, I think helped me kind of craft who I am now, you know.
Yeah, that's good. So y'all also clashed a lot then, I'm assuming. Yeah, for
early
sure.
on, for sure. He's an Aries, I'm a Leo, so I'm a big believer in that too. So, you know, we get along now, but early on, we was
clashing a lot.
All day, every day.
That's the evolution right there. I want to say this, unfortunately, we was robbed of that experience, you know. Obviously, because what part of Africa are you from?
My dad's from Ghana, my mom's from Liberia.
Okay, your mom's from Liberia, your dad's from Ghana. I want to get to Ghana. So with that being said, with that, I know we hear that a lot, obviously strict, and you didn't get the opportunity to speak about other things or get the focus on other things outside of education. So what do you feel like is a solution for, let's say, a young man right now that has strict parents that's African, or just not even just saying African, but in general, but what do you feel like a solution now is? Because we know life is more than that, and education is not just going to school, getting a degree. So what do you feel like a solution to that is?
Yeah, honestly, as the child, from the perspective of the child, man, you have to understand that your parents do the best that they can. They're only operating from the level of knowledge that they have, right? So, you know, being able to put yourself in your parents' shoes, your parents are just people, you know, they're just overgrown kids. The same way you're 13, 14, your dad was 13, 14 at one point, and it just so happened he's got more years. And, you know, now you look at him like he's your dad. But honestly, as I started to have kids, I realized, hey, my dad was just figuring shit out too. I'm figuring it out with my son. My son looks at me like I'm Superman. Like, I'm just figuring it out.
That's a good thing.
You know, so understand that your parents are just people who are trying to figure it out. They've never had a child that at your age, you know, before. Maybe they have, and you have an older sibling, and maybe this is their second go-round, and they're trying to figure it out a little bit better with you. But, you know, understanding that and saying, okay, well, from my parents' perspective, they were raised with their parents, and their parents come from a third world country or come from, so for them, they see education as the best thing that they can give to you, right? And so the reason why they pressure you to educate, they don't want you to do, you know, pursue sports or this, that, because they don't see it as a viable means to achieve anything of a life. They grew up with people who were highly athletic and were sports superstars, and they back in their countries or maybe even here in the United States, and they didn't amount to anything. They grew up with people who were musically talented and things of that nature, so they don't see your vision of being a musician or whatever it may be that you're trying to pursue.
Sure.
So for them, their job is to give you the best that they possibly can give you, and for them that means education in some cases, right?
Yeah.
And so you know, you can't fault them for that, and so you just have to take it with the understanding and take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, you know, this is the perspective that they're coming from, and try to move through that.
So with that being said, just for my train of thought, with your parent, when did you feel like you got to that point where you was understanding like he was just a child at 1.2, and it's like they just trying to figure out, when did you come to that realization of giving that grace?
Yeah, I think it started when I was incarcerated. You know, my dad came to see me at one point in a far off jail somewhere, and he had broke down crying. That was the first time I ever saw my dad get emotional. And he said, I love you. So that was the first time he ever told me he loved me too. So growing up as a child, like, you know, I didn't realize it until that point that like my dad really never said like, yo, I love you, son, or anything like that until I was incarcerated, right? And so I realized, man, like, you know, he's going through his own emotional situation of seeing his child behind bars. It's not something that's a reality for him. And so that started that. But then when I had my own child and my own son, then I really started to realize, like, hey, man, like, you know, there's no rule book for this. There's no hand guide for this. And then watching my dad change also in his evolution as a grandparent and how he deals with my son, completely different. Completely different experience.
Talk about it.
Yeah, so it's like I think he realizes that his mistakes and how he was raising me, and the same thing. Even I realized some of my mistakes with my son early on, and being too hard on him at 4 or 5 years old because I was trying to, you know, make him a certain way. So, we all learning, you know.
Do you feel like your pops blamed himself to some degree?
I think there probably is always an element of that, I think. But, yeah, I mean, it's probably an element of that. I never really asked him, honestly. I probably should, you know, talk to him about it. But I think that, you know, overall, there's not really much. The only thing that, you know, could have possibly changed was him understanding more of like what I was going through. But there's no real way for him to do that.
Correct.
As somebody who's coming from one reality to a reality of this American system, or how we grow up, and not having any clue on how like a child who is technically African but born in the U.S., like, I'm in the middle ground where I'm like not really African but not really American.
Nah, we
neither.
jacking that, bro.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, he doesn't understand what that experience is like. So it's hard for him to understand to have given me anything else besides what he did. So,
I guess that would go like in some capacity, like accountability, because I feel like as men we take accountability for stuff that's like stuff we shouldn't even take accountability for, but it's just like that's just part of it. So like stuff that other people done, but if we was associated, we'll take accountability. So maybe he does feel that way, and that's the way why he broke down crying, because maybe he felt that way a little bit. But obviously, I'm sure you obviously not gonna blame him because you have your own accountability, of course.
100%.
So now the transition, obviously we talking about children. So how many you have right now?
I have two.
Two? Okay, boy and a girl.
Yeah.
Okay, who's older?
My son is 11. My daughter's turning 3.
Okay. When she turned 3 this month? Or?
October.
Yeah. October what?
6.
I'm the 4th. She a Libra. So so she gonna be great in life. So with that being said, because I have a son, he just turned 2 yesterday.
Congratulations.
So I need the gems and the intangibles like that helped you. That you've been instilling with him, and like the process, because like right now I know I'm struggling, and even me and his mother like working things out, and she's a great mother. I definitely want to go on record saying that. Like how is that process for you, or how's it been?
Yeah, man. So 2 things, man. I think one of the biggest things with raising my son has been really understanding the end result, right, and kind of understanding what the end result is that I'm trying to get to. I want to raise a man who is well-rounded, who is a pillar of his community, who is a high achiever and things of that nature. And so from that perspective, I raise him as if he's that. Now already. I talk to him just like he's an adult. I say, listen, man, this is how you have to operate. I guide him through things. I don't try to sugarcoat things or give it in child. I don't believe in hiding things or things of that nature, right? Like I talk to him about pretty much everything for the most part. He's 11 now. He's turning 12. You know what I mean? And so he asked me about my, when I was incarcerated. I explained to him what happened. He's going through things at his school and dealing with people and things of that nature. I walk him through exactly how,
to deal with
I feel like he should deal with situations. And I also give him the grace to figure his own way out, right? Because I also don't believe that I should teach him what to think, but teach him more so how to think, right? And how to learn. I don't want him to just take everything I say and that's it. Listen to what I'm saying. That's my experience. You take your experience and things and you formulate something that you feel like is the right way to go. So giving him that ability to trust himself. Another thing I realized, actually I think I heard this on social media some time ago, was pretty much they were talking about encouraging kids based on not the achievement, but the process. So right now I have him doing a routine. He does 50 push-ups in the morning when he first wakes up. He brushes his teeth, he walks the dog, and he does 2 hours of focused work. I don't praise him per se on, oh, you got so strong, or you did this end result, but more so, oh, you've been consistent with it. Like, you've done it 16 days in a row. Keep it up. Good job. Like 30 days, 60 days. So the consistency is what I reward him for, not necessarily the end result, because I want him to learn how to instill habits. That's one of my biggest downfalls. I don't feel like I'm as disciplined or as consistent as I need to be with certain things that I do in my life, right? And so because I know that that's not something that I can necessarily provide to him by example, because I'm still working on it, right? And honestly, teaching him is actually helping me also, because I'm like, damn, if my son doing 50 push-ups anymore, I probably need to be doing it too, right?
Right?
I can't just keep telling him to do it, And so, I think that is a big thing. And then also second is the relationship with the mother is key too, right? Because sometimes it's very difficult to maintain healthy relationship dynamics with the mother of your child if you're not together in that time. And that's been a learning process also. I've been through hell and back with his mom. I mean, literally, I'm talking about we've been through everything. And this is somebody I was with when I was 15, all the way up until, 20-something. But she's been there more than half my life at this point. But we've had a lot of volatility, and that's why we even separated in the first place. But learning how to really deal with her and even, kind of take the role, even though we're not together, as the man even though the family unit is not together, it's still a family unit,
Correct.
whether or not it's together or not, right? You have a new spouse or whatnot, it's now a 4-person family unit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter whether y'all together or not. And so as a man, our job is to lead regardless, whether or not people want to accept that or not, or what all the new kind of theories are.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to lead and take accountability for the success or failures of our family relationships and dynamics. And so, you know, if his mother is, you know, and our dynamic is not good, I take that on me. If there's something I'm not doing right to communicate with this person. There's something that's missing in how we communicate or how we are dynamic that I need to figure out, right? And so, and then also leading from the perspective of when you are able to lead financially, it's a lot easier to lead regardless of whether y'all together or not. Because what I've also come to learn is that in those dynamics between, you know, baby moms and whatever, even normal like girlfriend,
Boyfriend,
wife, women in general, I don't believe, you know, I just don't believe that it's easy to have a woman follow if you're not financially leading. You know what I'm saying? It's just a hard thing, because if you think of how we evolved, essentially, right? Initially, you had to provide food and resources, right? So if you weren't able to provide food, if the women have to go out and struggle to find food and resources, then what are they coming to you to look to you to do, right? What are you providing in the context of why they should follow you? If you think of it back in those days, if I done killed the elephant and I got food for months, well, guess what? People are gonna be over here trying to, and guess what? What I say is gonna be kind of the leading, foremost, valuable, you know, word at the end of the day. And so, you know, if you want to fix your dynamic relationships with spouses and you know, significant others, baby moms, baby mama drama, whatnot,
call it,
lead financially first, you know what I'm saying? And take care of things financially first, and let them see you achieving your goals and heading to things. And then, you know, a lot of times those conversations can be a little bit easier to have. Not saying it fixes everything. You also need to have a healthy level of emotional intelligence to be able to understand, okay, I don't need to argue with this person all the time. I don't need to yell at this person. They might try to start, because they will start over anything. They'll pick battles with you.
Hey.
You can't engage sometimes. Sometimes, like, this isn't worth me doing. Listen, go do what you do. I'm not talking. We're not doing this right now. And eventually they'll stop. You know, they'll realize, okay, if I start picking with him, he's just going to bang on me. He's just going to click the phone up, and you know, we need to. Next time you want to talk to me, let's have a healthy conversation. If you start leading from that perspective, a lot of times, you know, it's healthy. But to the point I was making earlier, it's good for the child to see that.
Correct.
Especially a boy. Because he sees his father, you know, even though, because boys will know their mama's crazy sometimes. You know, my son says it all the time. He's like, man, mom's, you know.
She wildin'. Facts.
You know, so, yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm taking a lot from that, especially as a young father. Like I told you, my son just turned 2. So, like, trying to obviously co-parent and figure things out from, like you said, from an emotional standpoint. Obviously, you know, women, they did a huge job by bringing life into this world. So it's always a level of respect there, of course. So with that being said, just to back it up to with your pops, though, I wanted to say, now as a grandparent, like, with that relationship, him helping out, like, how is that?
Oh, man, it's great.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, my
the
dad.
Transition,
my dad and my son's mom's father, his grandfather on his mom's side, they compete on, you know, being the best granddad, you know what I mean? So you got granddad, which is her mom, her dad, and then grandpa, which is my dad. And, you know, they always trying to outdo each other on Christmas gifts and spending time with him and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see that, you know, he has multiple men in his life to look to. And he gets different things from each of them. My dad is highly, you know, intellectual. Her dad is highly physical. He's very, you know, football, karate, shooting guns, stuff like that.
He gets the best of both worlds.
He gets the best of both worlds, and I kind of embody both of those as well. So he gets a very well-rounded mix. And my dad's a lot lighter on him than he was with me, right? And I think he kind of learned from that to like not be as stringent and strict on a child. But yeah, I mean, their relationship is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's super valuable to have that, you know?
No, for sure. I just wanted to say that before I forgot that question, but I want to go back to obviously the parenting. Just as far as that, with your child, when is some times when he's also instilled something into you? Because we know that happens.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. Honestly, you know, emotional management, I think. You know, he is an emotional child. Like he's very big on family. He's very tied to his family, and he's very emotional, not necessarily for himself, but for his family. Like if he sees somebody going through something, it'll reflect in his energy. He may cry about it. He may, you know, because his grandmother might be going through something, or his mom is stressed out, things like that. And so that really instilled in me a certain sense of, because honestly, I'll be honest with you, man, when he was 2, 3 years old, I just come home from prison.
Yeah.
So I was very, you know, I had a little bit of toxic way of thinking about things, like, oh, my son got to be woo, you know, this type of way or whatnot. And I'm not a super emotional person in general. Like I don't really, you know, it's not that I don't try to be, it's just not really my nature. Like, you know, I don't do a whole lot of that, right? Not that I don't feel things, but you know, it's just not a thing. So with him, I'm like, okay, I see that this is how he is, and I have to understand that this is healthy for him to be able to express these emotions in the way that he needs to in order to operate. It doesn't make him less in any way, shape, or form, right? It's just this is how he processes things. This is how he has a healthy emotion, and then he has a strong connection to the people around him. That's a superpower, you know, essentially, you know, because that motivates him to do things in certain ways. So when I speak to him about things, I understand and say, listen, man, you know, you want to achieve these things not because you want to have a certain lifestyle alone, but you want to achieve these things. Don't you want to take care of your grandma? She got medical bills. Don't you want to make sure she's straight? Don't you want to make sure your mother is good? And so him understanding from that perspective helps a lot. And it also helps me to understand that, you know, in my own self, like, okay, like, you know, understanding how to connect emotionally with people around me is important, and because that's how he is, you know, and so that I kind of take that and apply that a lot of times.
Respectfully, and with that, with coming home, like you said, obviously you came home with a toxic mindset of thinking. When did that transition, and what were, like, let's just say 2 key factors for somebody else that's coming home right now? Coming home, obviously it's a disconnect with their child because you've been gone, like they've been figuring stuff out on their own. So let's just give some gems on that.
Sure. When did it transition? Man, I was toxic for a while. I'm not gonna lie to you, man.
How long? What we talking, 5, 10, 7?
Yeah, probably like a good 4 or 5 years. I mean, because I was very, like, you know, when I came home, I was on a mission. I learned so much about our culture, where we come from. I learned a lot in prison, you know. And so I was on a mission, really, you know, to, you know, really buck the system. This is before being conscious or being woke was a thing. You know, at that time, it was very few people online that was talking about things like that. Like, you know, he had the Umar when he first really started talking about some of these things. But yeah, I was one of those guys. I was like, listen, man, like, we gotta tear the system down. Like, we gotta do that. Also, I was real kind of militant in that way. And but then I also had some of the, you know, the mentality of, you know, my girl should act like this, my son should act like this, and da-da-da-da. And I realized that, you know, not giving grace to people to be who they are and growing their own timelines was a big thing. So it was probably about 4 or 5 years before I realized that, because it was my second relationship that I had after my son's mom. That, you know, I started to learn a little bit more of those things, because I started to realize, okay, here I was with somebody who was much more positive and much more healthy in how she dealt with people. And, you know, I saw myself carrying some of the toxic traits that I had from a previous relationship into that relationship. So I was like, you know what? I had to reevaluate how I dealt with things sometimes. And when I started to see some of the same behaviors or same dynamics that I had in a previous relationship, in this relationship, I was like, you know what? There's a common denominator in that, right? And so, you know, I have to take responsibility. Okay, maybe, you know, learn to let things go. Sometimes I can't just, because I'm unhappy about something or I don't like something, doesn't mean I need to pound it in and talk about it all the time and really make it an issue. Sometimes I can just let it be, and like we can address it at a later time. I can let you know, like, look, this isn't how I feel about something. And so that's when I was like, okay, that was kind of the unraveling of some of those toxic traits and toxic things as far as relationships go.
Yeah, and I would say I'm sure if you agree with this, you would say that it still came from a healthy aspect because, like you said, you came home with the toxic trait because obviously in there you're learning. You know, it's intentional. The school to prison pipeline, all that.
Yeah.
You know, it's intentional. So you finding this out, like you said, first level of consciousness, like. You coming home with great intentions, but just how you was going about it. But you took accountability, reevaluated, and that's definitely what it's about. That's evolving right there.
Yeah, bro. I mean, luckily I'm an introspective person.
Okay.
So I spend more time inside than I do outside, honestly. Like I really spend a lot of time thinking to myself. I have to be alone a lot of times to really process things that happen. Like we just came from Invest Fest like this weekend and I still haven't like gotten home yet or just gotten time to just like unwind and process everything myself. And so, you know, that kind of throws me off sometimes. I need that space to just sit down and just be like, okay, let me process everything that's going on. And so through that, I was able to unwind a lot of these things. I was able to say, damn, why am I behaving this way? And then when I realized that, like, I really became a man in prison. I was 18 to 21 is formative years for a man, right? While a lot of guys were in college, you know, joining frats and learning who they were through college experience, I was doing it in the prison system and with guys who were 30 years in, 40 years in, 10 years in and whatnot that had completely different mentalities.
Right.
And the thing that I was fortunate about was I spent more time around guys who had a better head on their shoulder. They did 20 years, but they also were thinkers.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they had better, you know, models, and they used to say things like, you know, if they knew what they know now at my age, man, how different life would be. And I'm like, man, tell me what you know now then. Like, give it to me. And so, you know, that was solid. But then even with some of those guys, they might not have the best concepts on relationships because they didn't have them.
Yeah.
Their last relationship was 18 on the streets and they 40 now, they grew up in the prison system. Or, you know, guys that were, you know, maybe they do have relationships in and out, but they aren't the best people to take relationship advice from, you know what I mean? Like, and so, you know, very few people in the prison system, as intelligent and intellectual as people are, have good positive insight on healthy relationship dynamics with people in general. You know, even with other men and things of that nature, we have a very different mentality on how do I deal with another man with certain things, right? Disrespect or respect or how we talk to each other and things of that nature. And so, that's all learning process of coming home and saying, you know, I had a hard time with that. Also, when I came on the job site in construction, I had a very hard time because the guys on the construction sites, they have a different way of playing and joking with each other that I wasn't used to. You know, they making little funny jokes and stuff like that I'm just like, where I come from for the past year or two, it would be problems, right? And so just kind of learning like, okay, I'm not getting along with everybody because of a mentality that I have. I'm getting in trouble on my job site. These what do you call it? The white hats, the managers, the project managers on the job. Like I'm constantly in the office, and I'm not even doing anything to anybody physically, but just the energy I'm carrying towards situations is putting me as an outcast in these situations. So just learn how to deal with other men, learn how to deal with women. Was just something that was a learning process, having to unravel, you know.
No, facts, and like you said, like you had to go within. You go within a lot, and that's the most important right there. Everything is within. Once you figure that out, all the external is pretty much a breeze, I would say, because you're grounded within. And like you said, even with figuring that out, just took a level of accountability. So anybody out there, like evaluating is always going to be a great thing. Like even when you do evaluate, you realize you're doing better. You're always going to continue to evaluate, and that goes hand in hand with evolving. That's why I said it's ing. It's not like you where you at today and you don't need to grow no more. Like every day you're continuing to better yourself every day. And so with that, I want to just go back because even like you said with being a father and obviously leading financially, now obviously with the responsibility of leading financially, how do you deal with not being able to always be present, not obviously always working? I know you posted that probably like a few weeks ago regarding something like that. And I like, even me, like I struggle with that, like trying to figure things out because like entrepreneurship is not
it's
a
tough.
breeze.
It's tough, bro. I mean, right now, before I came here, where I was on the call with my girl, she's at the school right now, unenrolling my son from the public school system because he's being homeschooled this year. Right, because I saw what was happening with the school system and how he was kind of the education he was getting, first off, was lackluster. Second off, I started to see some of the same patterns that I went through as a kid. The school system putting on to him, like, oh, he's leaning in his chair backwards and he's getting, write-ups for things like that. And I'm like, but he's a boy, first off. And, I think I'm a big firm believer that African American children learn differently by nature. When we grew up in our environments, we learned from the, outside doing things, you learn from the men around you, right? And so, hands-on experiences, whereas others may grow up a little bit differently. So I'm a believer that, sitting a child in a classroom all day, every day is just not the best result. And then trying to punish them for those things. And then on top of that, again, teaching them what to think and not how to think is a big thing. So I'd say, okay, I homeschooled him for his second grade year, and I'm homeschooling him again now. But the problem is, again, to the point to what you're asking as far as entrepreneurship, I'm here in Atlanta. He's back home in the DC area. So, it's like it's a very tough balancing act. I wanted to bring him here with me, and I wasn't able to this weekend. But the point is that it's hard to balance not being there and still being present for your kids, because with what we do as entrepreneurs, even when I'm home, a lot of times I have to work.
Still
I'm
busy,
managing so many things. And so I think the biggest thing is, again, communication with the child, with the kids, and letting them understand what it is that you're doing. But also there's a big power in them watching you do what you do as well. I've got some of the, I think the only time to the point of earlier about emotions as well. The last time I actually came to a tear was not too long ago for Father's Day. My son actually, he gave me a very heartfelt speech that he wrote about how he watches me do what I do, and how he wants to be like me, and how he admires the things that I do, and how he understands why I'm not around sometimes, why I am. So it's kind of like, that was very emotional for me, just hearing him say that, because I could see how mature he was, and also see how he's also internally processing things, right? He's not just taking, words from his mom or his Gigi on her side, or anybody else that talks about how I'm so busy, but like he will actually stand up and say, well, he's busy because he's doing X, Y, Z, because he observes and watches. And so I think communication, leading by example, is just really important. And then on top of that, as entrepreneurs, we also do get a lot of time and flexibility in our schedule. So building time into your schedule to say, okay, this is a day, so I'm just going to be with my son or be with my kids, and do things that other people may not be able to do. Like, I could take him on a Tuesday to go to his go-karting school thing. Like, he does go-karting, private go-karting or go-karting league. And they, race go. I could do that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays or whatever it may be. I could do things with him and take him places that other people can't, because they got to work 9 to 5 and things of that nature. And on top of that, I think a lot of people as 9 to 5ers, they think that, as entrepreneurs, we don't have as much time, or we're not, because that's what a lot of my family tells me. But the reality is, you go work 9 to 5, your kid comes home, you still don't have time. By the time you get home, it's 6:30, and then you got to figure out food and da-da-da. So you really don't get a whole lot of time either. So I might be in the house working, but I still get a good 3-4 hours throughout the day that I'm just messing with my son, we're playing back and forth and stuff like that,
Yeah, and I appreciate it, because like that's what I know. I'm like trying to find that balance. Like, I don't even like to use the word balance, but for the lack of a better word right now,
exactly right.
I'm gonna say balance. Because it's like running back and forth, different things. Like, even like yesterday, I seen him finally last night after the last day of InvestFest, because obviously, like, this was my first year at InvestFest. Last year I was like doing something else. I was out of the state, but then this year, obviously, my bro Chris was speaking on stage this year. So I was like, I know how powerful it is to be in a room. Like, even with speaking with him, he was able to obviously get not behind the scenes, but this is how he was able to wind up managing all of EYL's stuff and then working with him. So it's like, he's telling me, like, bro, like, you need to be in the room. So I was like, yo, it only makes sense. Even if I'm already doing my other entrepreneur stuff, like networking, like actually being in the room is better to network with somebody versus like just sending them a DM.
Yeah,
like when you meet them
100%.
face to face, they feel the energy, like, all right, this could be a connection, this could lead to something, and you build that way.
Shout out to Chris too, man, because I actually just texted him this morning. I sent him a DM because I didn't didn't get to connect with him at the event, but I've been meaning to.
Okay.
And so I sent him a DM and said, "Yo, bro, like I've been trying to catch you. I
got
need
you.
you." And we actually just texted this morning. So
Okay.
hopefully,
You got
Chris,
his number?
Yeah.
Okay, bet. Yeah.
Hopefully we end up working together because I definitely need help on that.
Just say the word. Like after this, I'm gonna be with him. We're going to get some dinner. Like I told him, bro, like inspired, bro. Like obviously we was building up for Invest Fest, getting his booth ready.
Yeah.
All that Zayla, the whole family, the whole team. So
Tough.
I got you. Say the word. I want to ask you this: what does evolving through experience mean to you in your own words?
Evolving through experiences to me means that you are constantly learning from the experiences that you have and actually implementing changes in real time. So, a lot of people would say things like, they'll hear people give them feedback about themselves and say, man, you're always showing up late or whatever it may be. And they're like, well, that's just the way I am. Or they're like, well, why you always got to talk to me in that kind of way? Like, why is this how I talk? Like those type of things is only holding you back. And if you just want to stay where you are in life, you know what I'm saying, and as a person, then you essentially just, if you're not growing, you're dying. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
And so at the end of the day, evolving through experience means when you get experiences, which we all do every single day, take the things that you're getting, the feedback you get from people, if the experiences you have with other people. If it's not positive, it's not what you want. If your life ain't what you want, you need to figure out, what am I doing? What do I need to do in order to take my life to the next level? What do I need to do to fix this so it doesn't happen again? If I'm constantly arguing with this particular person and we don't get along, how do I better need to communicate with that individual? Things of that nature, right? Yeah. And then also spiritually, you know what I'm saying? I think spiritually is a big factor as well, because a lot of times, we try to do it all alone, right? And I think that the way we evolve spiritually is the most important thing. Because I think when we talk about evolution, and I love the logo because it's showing the steps. And on a spiritual note, I believe that our goal is to get, as we continue to evolve, the goal is to evolve spiritually to reconnect with God, essentially, right? And so, that's when they talk about, what Christians would say, like, they want to be like Christ or whatnot. And Buddhists, their goal is to reach nirvana, to break the cycle, the karmic cycle, and reach that stage of enlightenment, right?
Correct.
That's ultimately the same objective,
Everywhere.
right?
Yep.
And so the evolution process is so that we can become the best people and the best spiritual people that we can. And so sometimes it's hard for you to do it on your own. So I believe that prayer and meditation are the two biggest tools that we can use as individuals in order to grow. Praying is, I look at as speaking to God or talking to God, and meditating and listening to God. So when I talk about being more introspective, like I'm trying to listen to what I believe God is telling me on how I should move or how I should deal with a situation, especially after praying about it, right? And so that I think is a big thing. So evolving through experiences to me is, kind of those two things.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I always ask every guest that, because it's all the same thing, but how y'all explain it is always a beautiful. They always hear a different perspective, even though it still aligns with, like I said, evolving through experience. And what you just said reminded me of this book. Oprah Winfrey actually wrote it. It was called, how we always say, like, what's wrong with you, and that could be like offensive. It was instead of saying what's wrong with you, you say what happened to you. The book is called What Happened to You. So when you come off like that and you're having a conversation with somebody on why they may not be evolving, instead of saying what's wrong with you, you ask them what happened to you. It comes off in a different tone where it's like, dang, like, this is why I act like this. It allows them to really digest it versus being defensive off rip.
Yeah, no, that's a fact, man. That's very true. And a lot of times we don't even think that there's something that happened to us that made us a certain way. But sometimes, a lot of times it is. It can be something as small as, especially when you think of your childhood. Your childhood is literally just one long process of experiences that you're learning through. You touch a hot stove, you learn not to touch it again.
Right.
You say something in class and everybody laughs at you. You learn not to say the same thing in class again. You say the wrong thing to a parent and they hit you. Like, you learn, well, that gets this type of reaction. When I speak my mind, I get slapped or whatever. So now you don't want to speak your mind anymore.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I have this conversation with my mother all the time. She had a very traumatic childhood. from all types of things. Her mother was abusive. She was molested and raped at an early age and things of that nature. And had a child through that. My oldest brother. And so sometimes I think about, why is my mom acting in the way that she's acting? Why is it hard for me to communicate sometimes with her? What is going on? What went on with her? Why is she the way she is? And we talk about these things all the time, because I'm literally trying to help her think through and work through some of the ways that she is and why she's having trouble with her siblings and communicating with her sisters and some of those deeper
conversation
issues. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, it's so key. Even if you think that you're perfectly normal or you have no issues, if you really sit down and take some time to think through your childhood experiences, you'll figure out, why some of the things are the way they are for you.
And it's a next level. With that, I want to also ask, what's a book that truly, or two books if you want to, that truly impacted your life, that obviously take you to that next level of understanding, like evolving, and you actually had some intangibles from that book or books?
Well, I would say for sure it was the Quran was one. And I say the Quran because, not that I am Muslim per se, but the thing is that understanding that what I thought my whole life, that Muslims were different than Christians, were different than this people. When I read the Quran, I realized that they talk more about Jesus in the Quran than the Bible does. And when I learned that, it's pretty much the same storyline, just taught from a different perspective and a different culture, that allowed me to break down a lot of the barriers that I had in my own mind about what spirituality meant, right? And because once I broke down that barrier, I started to look into other religions and other spiritual belief systems and realize it's all one thing, one message, just coming through different people and different cultures. And so once I realized that, I realized the universal truth to me, from my perspective, is that, my objective is to get to God, whether that's through, Christianity, Islam, and this, that, third. And I look at it as everybody, I respect everybody's belief systems, and I don't, engage with people who want to say, well, this is the only way and that's the only way. Like, believe whatever you need to believe to do your thing, do you. I know that, to me, from what my understanding, my experiences, is that my objective is to reach God. And the common thread throughout all these things is that, there's certain things that are common across the board. Being a good person, doing things that, praying, watching what you eat, watching what you say, watching the things that you do. Like, it's all pretty much a similar thread. And so that was huge for me, right? Is once I read that, and then and it also led me down the path of understanding my own African spirituality, African practices, and understanding that, when I go to the original source of what I see as this original source of everything on the planet, because we all know life started in Africa.
Correct.
Even the white scientists acknowledge that fact, right?
Yeah.
If that's the case, if life started in Africa,
A long time after.
you know what I'm saying? If everything started there, then the original version of religion and spirituality would be found there as well.
Correct.
Right? And so when I started to observe and think back to, okay, what are my own African practices and what did my ancestors believe? If they had never encountered anybody, any outside forces or outside influences, what would they have believed and what was their practice? Once I started to open that door, that led me to even a deeper truth, where I started to understand that African spirituality is the foundation of all religious practices. If you look at Christianity, Christianity is literally a carbon copy of African spirituality, outside of Jesus as the main character. When you look at the archangels, Archangel Michael, Gabriel, Ariel, all the different archangels, what I come to understand is 7 main archangels in Christianity, right? Or in, I would say, Judaism, Christianity, even Islam, same thing. And when you look at the name for God in Hebrew is Elohim, and the El is the prefix, right? It's El apostrophe Ohim. Now with Michael, Gabriel, Ariel, all these angels, they're subsections of God. They're different facets of God. So they end in El, which is a suffix. So they have, Michael with his apostrophe El at the end. And so they're different subsidiaries of God. And in African spirituality, in Yoruba culture, they have Ogun, Oshun, Obatala, and all these 7 primordial spiritual entities from the Western perspective, they say, oh, they got 7 different gods or different gods, but that's not the case. It's the same way you have 7 different angels in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, right? They are 7 spiritual entities that are subsects of God. And so they have one overarching God in African belief system, and they have 7 essentially angels or Orisha, what they call them in our practices. And so basically when I started to understand that and the power of ancestors and connecting to your ancestors, that just opened up a whole door. And all that came from me just kind of knocking the door down and reading a book outside of the Bible, which was the Quran, and understanding the similarities and not the differences.
Correct.
Right. So long answer on that is that was one book that was huge for me. And then the second book, I guess, would be evolution-wise, I would say, see, if it was going to be financial, I'll say, like...
Well, you can say that because I think it's crazy you said it. I think you could say that because I think it goes hand in hand. Like, even reading, like, Fred McCallum book, like understanding candlesticks and everything, I think you could see, like you said, it focused on the similarities. Like you can understand how this stuff correlates. So if it is financial, go ahead. You can say that too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the financial books. I mean, I would hate to be basic, but it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, that kind of
that's a given. That's great though, because we talked about that yesterday at InvestFest. Like everybody is just about Rich Dad Poor Dad. Although it was basic, it's opened the door for you to understand it's a next level. It made something that could be complicated for many, made it so simple. So I give that to credit. So for sure.
Yeah, it definitely changed my perspective on how I looked at money, in general, and how I looked at also,
mindset.
Yeah. And that's what I was, really cool, because I looked at literally my dad and the struggles he went through financially. And when I look at generationally as African Americans, we got to realize most of us grew up with poor dad, right? But they didn't know anything about investing and things of that nature. And so how can they pass it down to us? Right. And so for that, it was kind of like when I took that book, not only did it open my eyes to like, okay, how I need to look at money, but it also opened my eyes to the struggles that we face as African Americans. Our parents did not have the knowledge and the mindset, the information to even pass it down to us in the first place. So when we see ourselves struggling today, when you can't make ends meet, you can't pay your bills, you can't, or maybe you can do these things, but you can barely make it out, you're stressing about bills all the time, it's because there was nobody in your family lineage that had the rich dad mindset that understood, okay, this is how I need to start looking at assets or liabilities, and this is how I need to start putting my money towards the things that I need to do. And so getting smart about finances, we live in an economy that is a capitalism. If you do not know how to operate within the capitalism, you will find yourself at the bottom of the capitalism. And so we as African Americans find ourselves globally at the bottom of the capitalism because we do not understand capitalism. Asians understand capitalism. Therefore, Asians are at the top of the food chain right along with the whites who created the system. Or I would say the Hebrews that created, the Jews that created the financial system or whatnot, Jewish banking system and things of that nature. They understand finances, so therefore they're top of the food chain. And nothing wrong with that. That's just how it goes, right? And so for us, if we want to see ourselves evolve through the economic food chain, we have to. It's literally a matter of life and death. Like when you look at it, like from a perspective of, you cannot. The reason why we have heart disease and all these things of that nature, because we do not understand finances. If we understood finances, guess what? We'd understand how to feed ourselves better because we can afford to eat better, right? A lot of times you don't want to, you need to be eating better, but you can't even afford to. So therefore you go,
pump McDonald's into your system all day.
And to your kids' system.
Facts.
Right? And so it's just so key that we understand these things. And then also even on another note, when we look at social injustices, the reason why people can get away with doing these things to us, right, is because we do not have the economic power in this country. When something happened with Asians and they had a couple Asian hate crimes, you had Stop Asian Hate like this.
Immediately.
And guess who was front and center? You had Barack Obama and Biden signing shit into law immediately. Like it wasn't even 2 weeks after they had Stop Asian Hate as a campaign. Meanwhile, you had Black Lives Matter for years, and they didn't even want to say it on camera publicly. Why? Because we don't have economic power. So we don't have economic power. How can we possibly expect people to stand up for it? Because guess what? The people who do have economic power, if they do say something like that, guess what? Next election campaign, guess where the money's going?
Yep.
To their competitor.
Yep.
Right? And so if we don't have money, if we don't have economic power, we don't know how to funnel the economic power into the political system through lobbying, through think tanks and things of that nature, we're never going anywhere. And so the first route, which is why I have so much respect for Troy and Rashad, EYL, and the whole family on that side.
AB.
Yeah, man. And Mike McDonald and Jamal and everybody from the EYL team is because these guys have put together something that's kicked down the door to the conversation of financial empowerment. And to see 20,000 people come together at an event like InvestFest to now come together for that purpose is absolutely phenomenal. And it's just the beginning, most importantly. And so now when the next step in that is not only to grow that footprint, but to also figure out how does that money flow into the political system so that we can also impact on a larger scale, because that's how every other culture operates.
Exactly.
You go look at the amount of super PACs out there, we got like 2 or 3 super PACs versus, you got Pacific Islanders that have dozens with millions and millions of dollars stacked in there, that millions of tons of lobbying organizations, Hispanic organizations that have millions of dollars in their lobbying organizations and millions of dollars in their super PACs. And we have like 2 Congressional Black Caucus and a couple little smaller, little name ones. So, end all be all is, I think, all from, my perspective on all these things stemmed from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and then understand, okay, why are we here? And how do we change this going forward? So we all need to be rich dad, whether you're a mom or a dad. Make sure you're a rich dad mentally, right? So that you can pass it down. Because generational wealth is information. It's not necessarily just houses and cars and bank accounts. Because I can give all those things to somebody who is financially illiterate and they would lose it all.
For sure.
Meanwhile, I could give my child all the financial gain possible and they don't need $1. They will figure out, they will know how to become a millionaire because of the information I instilled into them. So that's my message, I guess, for everybody,
Nah, I appreciate that, bro. Like, and just to double back, like, that's why many people that hit the lottery wind up going broke because don't have the literate.
Or athletes.
Yeah, athletes
I mean, look how many athletes get millions, or rappers. They get millions of dollars and end up broke.
Bro,
you know what I'm saying? And because they don't know how to leverage, they didn't know how to leverage their money. They didn't know how to leverage their power and their influence to turn into anything. And now you see some of them getting to it with podcasts and stuff like that. And now you got rappers who went broke during their careers, now making 100 M's, 50 M's, you signing multiple deals, 7-figure deals. And they're now learning because now we've also as a culture become more financially sophisticated. Now they're taking that money and putting it into real estate. Now they're taking that money and putting it into the stock market. Now they're taking that money and investing into businesses. And so now, because the conversation is no longer rims and chains and all that type of stuff, now people are looking at real assets, and the game is changing. So it's all about how we think, They say, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. As a culture thinks.
Vital.
And I'm gonna leave also on the note financially with, women are the primary people who need to really get this information as much as possible, because women are the child's first teacher, right? So if we want to change the generation, that starts with the women in our culture being financially intelligent and emotionally intelligent and knowing how to really operate within, the greater financial ecosystem, because they're the ones who are going to really instill first and foremost into the child. As the mother goes one way, the child is going to go that way. And so if you want to change a nation, you want to build a nation, you have to build your women. And the men on our end, obviously our job is to go to 100% in that direction. And so if you are a man who is getting to it financially, and you are a man who is getting to it emotionally and understanding who you need to be as a man, your main priority should be to educate the women in your life if they're not already there yet, right? Because if something happens to you, guess who's raising your child, right? And so if you have a baby mom out there or whatever it is and y'all not on good terms, listen, it's not about her necessarily. It's about your child. Because if God forbid something happens to you while you're on your mission of making your millions, right, and you get knocked off or hit by a car or something happens, she's responsible for raising your child. So the more you input into her as much as you can, and more you feed into her, the better off your child's gonna be. If you can raise your the mother of your child, whether you're together or not together,
Yeah.
to the point where she has $1 million mindset. Your child is set no matter what happens.
Facts. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So that's just really important, man. I think about these things a lot,
All the time,
man.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, and it's for sure, bro. Not to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. And these are conversations like we could talk about this all day. Like it's a plethora of topics, even going back to lobbying. Like even I be telling people like, yeah, everybody just go vote, bro. It's bigger than that. Like you lobby, get that financial back behind it. We stand together, bro. We ain't even got to worry about that. And we know it's rigged, but at the end of the day, lobbying, bro, vital.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm glad you said that because people need to. I've been saying it for a long, and I'm 23, but. These are the conversations and things I knew for a while now, but it's just like trying to tell it to people. Like everything's not for everybody right now. Like you said, everybody's on their own timeline.
Yeah.
So giving them grace is like a major thing that I have to work on, and obviously everybody has to work on.
Yeah, it's frustrating though, right? You be like, you want to shake them all, like why don't you get it?
Yeah, and then at some point we was probably there at some point, so it's like
100%.
It's like
nobody taught it to us, man.
Exactly,
so we're just now getting financial intelligence, and now political intelligence is a whole nother ball game.
Facts.
Who's out there teaching people about lobbying organizations, why they're important? Who's out there teaching people about super PACs and why? How we all know money goes into the political system. How?
Yeah.
Through super PACs. And if you don't have super PACs, you can't get money to the political system, which means you really have no voice. So all that voting that you're doing is great, and it's a first step. It's a very base level, right? But at the end of the day, you need to be able to move your vote in a way that matters. Matter of fact, uniting the vote. If we all say, hey, we're going to vote for the people, not because they're Democrat, Republican, but based on this agenda that we have through our lobbying organization, our lobbying organization saying these are the things that we're lobbying for.
Correct.
If you're not with this agenda, we're not giving you your vote on the national, state, or local level across the board. And who's coordinating that conversation, right? Like that's the next phase in our evolution as a culture in this country, at least. And then also making sure that we're reconnecting, because one thing I also realize is this, right? There's only two groups of people in America who do not have a base outside of America, right? And that's Native Americans and Black Americans. Native Americans did not have a base outside of America, and we know what happened to Native Americans. Black Americans do not have a base, have not established an official base outside of America because we were disconnected from Africa.
Yeah.
Asians, even the pilgrims, quote unquote, the white people that came over to America to settle this country, have a base in the UK, in Germany. They know where they come from. They have established economic collaboration between the people where they come from, right? Yeah. And so, Asians, same thing. Asians are very connected to their, as a whole, as a culture, they're very connected to their countries, whether they come from China or Korea, whatever it may be, and the Chinese and Korean government supports them here, right? Mexicans are coming over here left and right. This is jump borders, whatever you want to call it, but they know when they make their money, they're sending money back home to their people. And so the most important thing that Black Americans can do, to me, also, along with getting into financial system and getting into the political system, is getting into building their cultural system and their cultural connection to African countries, right? Facts. And you may not know specifically what country you come from. It don't matter. Get over there and adopt a country. Goddamn it, like go. It don't matter. You go to Ghana. Ghana's doors are wide open, right? You can go. Everybody's going to Ghana. Go see what it's talking about. That's the gateway. Yeah. But don't stop there. You got Liberia. You got Nigeria. You got Tanzania. You got Kenya. You got Mali. You got all these amazing countries with amazing culture, amazing history that you need to be able to connect to. Every other culture. Jamaicans understand that they come from Africa. They're very connected to their roots over there. Same thing with Haitians. Their spiritual practices are connected to African cultures. Brazilians are very connected to African culture. So even though they're here, this is why these groups of people have a very cohesive culture, because they adopted their culture. And that goes back to slavery and how things went down with American slaves. But that's for another time. But
no, for sure. Like I said, we can talk about it all day. And like even at the beginning when you said I'm African, I was like, I forgot exactly what you said after that. I was like, unfortunately, we was robbed of those experiences. So that definitely goes right down what I was saying.
100%, man.
I mean, it is what it is. But now, like you said, I always said I plan on going to Ghana. I think they released the dates for December.
Yeah, for sure.
So trying to go out there, trying to coordinate that. And I'm like, bro, I just said I'm gonna adopt the country. I'm just gonna go here. If I like I know the vibe gonna be lit. I hear it all the time, the experience. And it's like I said, when I go, I just need to be out there for a week. I don't even want my phone. I just really want to be embody in the experience in
Yeah.
the time, and like whichever where I go, hey, I'm jacking this where I'm from.
Exactly.
Like,
Facts,
that's how I'm
man.
a jacket.
That's
I don't
it,
care.
bro.
Nah,
That's
facts.
it, man. And
Yeah.
you know, there's always this places like AfricanAncestry.com people
Yeah.
can tap into. I always recommend people to go to AfricanAncestry.com as opposed to Ancestry.com because when you look at where you're from,
Correct.
and they tell you, oh, you're Nigerian, you're Ghanaian, I don't want people paying attention to that personally because Europeans created those borders, right? It's not about the country you're from, it's about the tribe you're from, right? So you have Ashanti tribes, Mandingo tribes, the Gan people, like you have different Bassa people of Liberia. What tribe is your bloodline from? Like that's where your true culture lies. And sometimes you have tribes that could be, you could be from this tribe and they can split between two different countries.
Yeah.
So they'll come back and tell you, oh, you're from Mali, but really you're Ashanti, you're from the Ashanti tribe. And so understanding that, it also has a lot of spiritual power when you understand that. Because when you understand your tribe, you can also, if you want to take it a step deeper, you can understand what are their spiritual practices and beliefs. And you'll find a lot of power in that. And a lot of people may think it's BS or may not, whatever it may be. But I promise you, I'm talking about this because of personal experience. Evolving through experience. There's things that have happened in my life that there's not a single tier of explanation for that like led me to this information, which is why I feel like it's part of my mission also to spread that understanding that people need to reconnect to African spirituality because that's where our spiritual power really lies. And it's not contrary to Christianity or any other belief system.
Yeah.
You can practice Christianity, you can believe in Christ, you can believe in everything, whatever your belief system is. African spirituality does not say you can't do this, that, and third, or it's something like that. It just means, it says, look, you're connected to your ancestors. Your ancestors are always part of your DNA. Yeah. You share DNA with them, whether or not they're here on the planet or not, and you can always connect to them and talk to them and things of that nature. So I ain't gonna get too deep.
Nah, that's gonna have to be a whole nother episode because I need to find out because I'm jacking whatever tribe.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Hey, whatever yours is, I'm about to just go with it. You feel me?
Man,
bro. And like you said, just to wrap it up before we wrap, like you said, it's life or death, evolving through experience. Like I tell people all the time, like this is not just a podcast. I don't like to call it a podcast. It's so much bigger than that. Like we literally do not evolve in every aspect, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and beyond. Yo, it's no other option. Either you're going to evolve or you're going to dissolve. It's the only two options. So at the end of the day, it's life or death. So I'm glad you said it because I say that just about every episode. So before we wrap again, bro, where can people follow you?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me at Kway.trades, Kway.
It'll be at the bottom.
.trades, you can tap in with Cheat Code, go to the App Store, download the Cheat Code app, you know what I mean? It's free. We do teach you
Cheat
for free.
Algo,
you tap in, you trade with us for free. So it's in the App Store, cheatcode.com app.
Hey, and like we said, cheat code. So we talked about the real intangibles. We're gonna have to do another episode on cheat code and the founders. Obviously, Jehu as well is in the building. So shout out to all of them. So if y'all enjoyed another episode of Evolving Through Experience, make sure y'all tap in on all platforms, YouTube, Instagram. Make sure y'all subscribe. And if you haven't checked out an episode, if you haven't evolved, today's a great day to start. Again, Evolving Through Experience.
Let's go, man. Love it.
Man, appreciate it.
100%, bro. I'm a bad